Civil War by Alex Garland, 2024. This is Survival Cinema. Let's get into it. Now, I've done a movie review on Civil War. I'll leave a link for that. This is going to be from the perspective of what would you do in that scenario. Now, I will give you a little backstory to the movie for those of you that haven't seen it and aren't aware of it. It starts at the beginning, or it starts in the middle of a American Civil War, the Second American Civil War. The current sitting president is in his third term, and there is a rebellion going on. The primary states rebelling against this president are the state of California and the state of Texas. Yeah, wrap your mind around that. As well as an alliance of, I believe, Florida, possibly Alabama, maybe Georgia, and two other southern states, and then Washington, Oregon, and several of the northwestern states. But effectively all the other states, minus possibly Colorado or Utah, going from Nevada eastward, right across the middle of the country, hitting the Great Lakes all the way out to the Mid-Atlantic and up to New England. All of those are considered the loyalist states, and so they are loyal to that sitting president. The others are all effectively in alliance against that active administration. Now, the movie is basically taking you on the journey with several war correspondent and photographers as they travel, four of them, from New York down to DC to basically interview the president. The alliance forces, the resistance forces are making a move on Washington, DC, and they want to get in there basically before everything goes down. From that perspective, the movie has its own pathway, its own plot, and all the characters, but I'll hit into some of the scenes that I think are relevant for us as preppers and for anyone presently right now still thinking, nothing like that could ever happen, which plausibility and possibility sound familiar and sound similar, but they're still two different animals altogether. So moving from there, the film starts in New York City. There's one scene that's a good highlight point. It's outside New York City streets. It's fall weather. It's kind of cold. You can tell people are bundled up, and there's a group of 80 people on the street gathered around a large 10,000-gallon water tanker truck with NYPD by the truck blocking it, pushing people back with riot batons, and the people are getting upset. They've got empty water containers in their hands, and they're in a riotous nature. My guess, without any further information, is either water supply, not to the whole of New York City, but to different neighborhoods, has been either compromised health-wise, or it's been compromised delivery-wise, where they're just not getting the water to all the locations. Something could have happened mechanically, something could have happened deliberately, but people now have to rely on these water trucks to get rations. So first off the top, it's always stressed, make sure you have enough water, because you don't know when your water supply would get cut off and it's not flowing, or if it could become compromised in a manner that even if you wanted to filter it, you might not feel safe filtering it. And depending upon what could be in it, there's less chance that if it's a bacteria, a virus, a fungus, you could still kill that with boiling. But certain chemicals, boiling just doesn't do anything at all. The chemicals remain and they stay just as toxic as they would without boiling. So sometimes it's better to avoid it if at all possible, which means you need to have water stacked up, bottles, jugs, everything, because you're not going to know exactly how long it takes. Now, as far as how long that was, it could have been 3 days. It could have been 3 weeks. There is no definitive timeline on that, but that's a key point, making sure you have enough water. As they progressed on their journey, they left and they started moving out towards the main highways. And they had a section of highway that all the vehicles were dead stopped. Some of them smashed into each other. Some, you can tell, pulled off the road. More than likely, some big accident, possibly a shootout, occurred quarter mile up, half mile up, and a lot of cars got stuck. There was no room for them to turn around. There was no room for them to back up because all the other cars were still back there. So in many cases, owners, the drivers, had to abandon their vehicles. Might have done it hastily, might have had a few minutes to plan things out. But that leads to another key factor. If you're using a vehicle as your bug out vehicle and you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be, still be prepared that your vehicle might break down in a manner that you can't immediately repair. Number two, there may not be any assistance or service to help you get it repaired. No tow trucks, no pulling over and, oh, there's a Napa, I can buy the parts from there. None of that stuff. It may be if you don't have literally spares for every single thing in your vehicle, in which case that means you're pretty much driving a second vehicle. You may have to leave it. So all of your supplies that you pack, you have to consider that there will be some things, if you've stocked up, that you're not going to be able to take with you. Simply, it's too bulky, it's too heavy. There's no way for you to properly carry it and anything else that you need. It's either you take that one tub of stuff or you take your one bag of stuff, depending upon what it is. So what you should try to do is think about compartmentalizing all of the preps that you intend to take. Not just simply have them in a single tub or a couple of tubs. That's good for weight dispersal, but also too, when you open those tubs up, everything should either be bagged or boxed or somehow put into its own smaller container. So this way, if you've got a tub that has first aid, hygiene, sanitary stuff, you can open that up and pull out the individual containers that may have everything from your first aid kits, your toothbrush, soap, your medicine, that sort of thing, and stuff that into another bag. If you've got another tub that has, let's say, some camping gear, you might be able to pull out the necessary stuff, your small sleeping bag or your small lightweight tent, whatever it is, because this way you can still take some things with you. And always good to have at least a smaller extra bag, an empty duffel bag, something folded up, rolled up, strapped to the outside of a backpack for carrying additional supplies, whether it's supplies you take with you or supplies that you gather along the way if you're scavenging. Now, as they move further in, they started to get to more suburban areas as they're passing through. And one of the things they came across, they came into this small town as they're passing through, and it effectively looked like Mayberry on a Sunday after church is over. Streets were clean, people were walking along, waving hi, everything seemed quiet, everything seemed normal. They stopped into a small boutique, and there was a girl at the counter. She's flipping through a magazine, and one of the characters said, "You are aware there's a pretty big civil war going on in the country?" And the girl looked up and just said, "We know, we're just trying to stay out of it," and then went back to reading her magazine. As the characters are outside, they started to notice that on the roofs of several buildings, there were guys with guns up high, keeping an eye out on things. So that small, quiet town was not unaware. They were not off guard. They were watching and they're paying attention. Small communities, especially where they know each other, tend to have the advantage that they can group together and make the decision that we're going to hold on and we're going to protect our families and our area. That's not to say you can't do that in a large neighborhood, in a large city, because a lot of large neighborhoods have the same feel because everyone lives and operates within, a 9 square block area of each other, and it's the same principle where they can say we're going to utilize these streets here and these streets here and block these areas off, and we're going to make sure that no one comes in to attack us. So just depending upon your neighborhood and your setup and the community of the people in it makes that determination how well it goes. But that's also something to keep in mind in your area. What is your block like? What are the next 5 blocks around you like? What are your neighbors like? What level of communication do you have with them? This could be something that if you actually do have a neighborhood watch and you actually watch out for each other and you are paying attention to what's going on, something could be organized. Are there common meeting areas that people use? Is there a park nearby? Is there a school with a fenced-in yard nearby? Things like that could become meeting places. They could become trading posts. They could become a fallback center for people if something happens to their own home and they have to evacuate. Instead of leaving your entire city, you might just simply relocate a few houses down or a street over within your neighborhood. Now, moving from that point, going forward, they pass through and they're looking to get some gas to top off their tank so they can finish making the trip, because they're riding in a big old like Ford Expedition style vehicle, so it's guzzling the gas down. They get to a gas station and the guys there, they're armed, they're casual. They tell them, hey, this is the price, this is what we want, and it's a lot. I think it was something close to effectively almost $300 for probably 12 gallons worth of gasoline. So it was clearly a higher cost to gas ratio. So while they're getting gas, one of the other characters, a younger photographer, is taking a walk around, just trying to get some general vibe shots, and she comes across what was probably a small workshop bay, big old structural building, and there's 2 guys hanging up, suspended up by their arms, still alive. one of the gas station guys comes over, and they kind of have a little conversation, and she offers to take his photo next to those two bodies. And I say bodies in reference to they're currently alive in that scene, but they're not looking good and they're not going to make it through the rest of the film. Now, that's a next stage that you have to be aware of. There are going to be people out there that are living wild, living free, and doing things the way they want it done. There was no backstory really to what those two guys did. It could have been simply something that they came to raid the gas station, take gas without paying for it, and that's the price you pay. It could have been they were a conflicting group on the other side of the train tracks and they were sneaking in and got caught. It could have been that maybe they had a grudge against those guys from back before everything went crazy, and they just decided, you know what, they got a list and they're going to start checking off names. But that's something also to be aware of, that without law, no matter how you feel about it, people make their own laws. Some people, they catch you stealing, they kick your butt and toss you out. Some might cut off your hand. Some might decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to torture you to make you realize that what you did was wrong. Others may just simply execute you then there on the spot because they don't want to deal with anything else. So the level that humans go to and the levels that they move through as things start to break down can become quite traumatic and dramatic for some people, and for others it may be a slow process, but they are much farther removed from the person they were before everything fell apart to where they're at that point in time. So now they're moving on, they're continuing on, they get to a certain point where they get into a shootout, or rather they're just getting shot at. And they manage to get out of their vehicles, get behind cover, and of course, because again, they're journalists, they want to investigate, they start looking around. They come across a field and they see a couple guys in camo, and there's some people that they've got pretty much down on their knees and execution style. And it turns out that it's a couple of their friends that were in the earlier scenes. And just off to the side, not out of sight, but just off to the side, a large pit and a dump truck, and they're dumping in bodies by the dozens. And in that particular scene, the common familiarity amongst that is you're looking at all those people in there and you're noticing that a lot of them all have bullet wounds in them. And so now an interrogation presents themselves where the guys with the rifles are asking, what are you guys doing? Who are you? And of course, everyone's nervous because you got guns pointed at people. And, you know, one guy's trying to say, hey, look, you know, we're reporters, we're journalists, we're taking photographs, we're all Americans. And the line that is given in response by one of the characters in that scene that's holding a rifle in a casual, almost too nonchalant sort of way, he does a little, what kind of Americans? In reference to, oh, we're going to make a determination. Are you American, or are you just American? And that leads to the next issue. You're going to have in a sort of, you know, world gone wild situation where people become very territorial. And if they don't know you personally, if they don't like the cut of your jib, as my grandfather used to say, they're going to have something to say about it. And depending upon how you're going about your business, that may be in direct conflict with them. You may come into their territory unknowingly, just trying to pass through, but from their perspective, you're coming in to either take or occupy something that belongs to them. Now, not too much else can be said with that because a lot of it comes down to where you're at and what's going on around you. And again, an ambush or a surprise is just that. It's an ambush. It's a surprise. You can't do anything about that. You just have to stay quick on your feet as best as you can. Now, they continue moving through, and they finally get into the DC area. And down there, that's where the shit show is really going on. It's a full-on firefight. As far as that goes, that really comes down to force on force type of tactics. They had come through several other firefights where it seemed to be small groups of military or paramilitary or anything along those lines fighting against each other. But down in DC, it's really strictly seems to be military personnel, military vehicles, and moving and grooving in that sort of way. Now, as far as on the civilian side, I saw none in the film, not even in the background. So for the most part, civilians tend to flee the hotspots and the high targeted areas, because if you're near something that's a resource, yes, that resource may be protected, but you may also be a target. And if you're in the pathway of a travel point along a main highway or an airfield or something like that, again, if there are hostile forces with any type of capability, they're looking to either control and contain that area, and that means that if you're in the perimeter, they're going to be eliminating you, or even if they're on your side, they may say, hey, look, you need to stay in this one location, you can't go anywhere else, otherwise we may think you're part of the enemy and we take you out just as well. So now you end up in either a lockdown situation forcibly where you can't go anyplace, or you're cut off from where you would normally go. You can't get back to your family that's on the other side of a barrier or a barricade because you're locked down within a certain perimeter. Now, the final end battle was less about prepping and surviving. It really delves into the whole tactical run and gun aspect of it. But everything leading up to that point, from the civilians in the area, and as you notice, they progressively devolved as they went along and got closer to the hotspots. And it's going to be the same thing in larger cities. The larger cities, the bigger metropolitan areas, and the immediate suburbs off of them, especially in the Northeast. Because up here in the Northeast, if you leave one town, doesn't matter where, doesn't matter what state it is, you immediately cross the border into the very next town. You might have a half mile of woods or a city park or something, but within the next 15-20 minutes, you're passing pretty much everything there is in that town, and then you leave that town and you cross into the next one. So there's no elbow room. There's no, you have left this bordered area and you're in an open waste area or an open free area. No, you're one town after the next town. So if people evacuate from a major metropolitan center in the Northeast, it's just a lot of people now flooding into the surrounding towns and then pushing through into the suburbs and then coming into the next set of towns. And then those towns start gathering around the next big city. So you're going to have an overlap of people escaping from two major points, fleeing away from it. They're going to interact with each other. And in those small towns, those spaces in between, that's where a lot of the conflict's going to be. And even if they're moving effectively in the same direction, so really within the conflict as it was in the movie, there were those small sweet spots where you were just far enough away from the major metropolitan area, but you hadn't quite gotten into the way out rural areas. You were in that Mayberry suburb type of environment, which seemed to be honestly the safest. As long as you were welcome or you weren't deemed as a threat, you were okay. And that's one of those things where if you're in a place like that, you're good. If you have to find a place like that, that's going to be a lot tougher because you're going to be running into all those other areas along the way. So within the framing of surviving in that situation, it is possible, but it's something that you have to be aware that you are going to be changing up your plans, your strategies, your tactics, whatever it is. Now, if you've got an end game, an end location to get to, then good on you. You know, you got to figure out how you're going to get there and cover that ground as quickly and as smoothly as possible. If you're a person that's just going to wake up one day and say, you know, it's time to go, then, you know, roll that dice and head out the door and, you know, see where the world takes you at that point. But that's my review on the overall survival cinema for that Civil War. And again, there's a lot of little things within the film that you'd have to watch to really pick up on. There's a lot of small things that when you rewatch it, you start to think, well, maybe I'll try this, or maybe I would think to do that instead. And again, it's about staying fluid, being able to quickly adapt as best you can to that changing environment and not getting overwhelmed and overtaken by it. That's all I got for you. Check out this next video that YouTube suggests, and I'll catch you in the next one.